because that's tax you would otherwise be paying at the pump that you're not, and the state needs the roads fixed. So actually the whole country is watching that pilot, and believe me, we're all going to see that happen very, very shortly in road states.
No, I love Canada. I would live there, except that I'm not smart enough. No, I'm not smart enough to learn all the new spellings. It's hard enough for me to learn as much as I did, down here. The word monetization is actually on Ian's shirt, so we're going to let you kind of riff on what he was saying and how he was speaking of it.
Okay. And just talking again about data, I think everything at the end of the day is very data driven. And to answer, just to add to your point, is one company or one vendor be able to provide us everything we need to do with data? It's impossible because there's just so many different types of data. I might need accounting data out of a certain segment of industry, and somebody might need performance data from a flood sensor or so on and so forth. So the amount of data that's driving the industry as a whole is something staggering to deal with. And I think that has a lot of opportunities for monetization. Even if there were 100 new vendors that would do something with data, I think there's space for 100 more to come in. So monetization, although it's kind of a fundamental fact of the existence of vendors to be successful and to exist, I think there's a lot of opportunity in monetization of IoT, monetization of cloud, and the only way for us to kind of succeed as vendors is to work together as a coalition or as a group to kind of address the larger scale issues such as a drought in California or too much snow in Canada, whatever it is. And on the governments, I honestly think if governments were privatized and run as a corporation, we would have a lot more faster decisions take place. That's it, Martin.
And when's the next election?
So I just want to provide a different perspective on monetization because what I'm hearing here is just really monetization, and I would say it's being described very one-dimensionally in terms of the billing and usage and consumption of a service to an end customer or to an enterprise. And if you think about IoT, and we're talking about ecosystems, we're talking about the number of parties that need to come together to provide that, that service or to bring a new business model to market. And monetization to me does not just mean billing, it means settlement. So it's really two sides of the coin. There's the billing in terms of everyone understands the concept of a bill, we get those every month. And then there's the much more complex behind the scenes that needs to happen, which is how do I compensate? How do I enter into a revenue sharing type of relationship with other suppliers that are bringing their own capabilities or services into that service that you yourself are bringing to market to deliver differentiation. So IoT, really for us, I think the most important aspect is really the compensation and the settlement across these ecosystems that's going to really set this apart and really drive a lot of the new offerings, because no company is going to be able to do it alone. And that by definition means that you have to then compensate partners, resellers, suppliers that are part of that ecosystem.
Now, we've been talking a lot earlier today in some of the talks in this room and panels, and I know some of the sessions about API. It's an API economy. So we're talking, I think, because we're talking about horizontal ecosystems and best-of-breed coalitions and all this stuff. That seems to lead to,
yes,
to get a little bit more geeky, to sort of API-driven.
It's just fundamentally what we know to be true. And this is not unlike what happened with with just the mobile platforms themselves. In terms of you start with a mobile platform and then you start building out APIs and developer ecosystem, and you want to build applications on top of those platforms. And people expect to be compensated for their part in supplying those applications or their value-added services. So I think that we're at the point even today where even if you look at a cloud service, why would anyone want to enter the market with just basic storage compute capacity when you have Amazon and the other market leaders. If this year it's all about providing, cloud to enterprises. Why would you enter the market if you can't add in other capabilities that allow you to differentiate that offering into the marketplace? And so by the very definition of, if you believe that to be true, that implies that that settlement or compensation is actually even more critical than the billing that you do, whether that's a simple subscription-oriented type of model that any billing company can do, or even usage and consumption.
Dave, you were shaking your head, yes?
Yeah, well, I think I'm the only one not in the monetization world here, so I'm more in software as a service. So when you mentioned API, I was ready to jump in at that.
Let's do it.
Because API, that's kind of table stakes for our business, right? I mean, we have an open API, and I don't know what the percentage, but well over 50% of all of our clients will be using, in an integrated way, other services with our service integrated together. Oftentimes we're not dealing with monetization issues just because folks who already have a service that's with different companies are already a little bit more developed than IoT. The idea of providing best of breed solutions to folks in kind of one central location is really, I think, where we're trying to get to. Getting back to Internet of Things, for us, one of our major sort of solar Internet of Things client is one in which we've used our open API and wrote to like 8 different monitoring solutions or sensor solutions from different solar arrays that had different, basically they were pulling the data from the sensors into their separate clouds, as it were. We wrote to all of those, pulled all the data into our one central location, and could then put a layer of more meaningful and actionable reporting and results. And so the integration with various different data sources is absolutely essential to get to really actionable, meaningful reporting and results.
So Brendan, how does a vendor go to a customer now? How does a customer define what they want to do? It sounds like you almost need to start defining things at the highest level possible.
Yeah.
And work your way down.
Well, if anybody hears from the big global SIs, you have a great business model here, because these coalitions need managing, these solutions need architected, and basically this API model that we all understand has come inside the firewall, right? I mean, if you look at how any developer sits down and writes a system today, they write it with this sort of software as a service construct, even if it's inside their own firewall. So obviously we're using APIs when we're talking to external vendors for whatever service we're getting from them. But even inside my own stack, I'm going to arrange all these things so they're talking to each other as a service. So this coalition approach is critical. Now, unfortunately, for those of us that are vendors providing some piece of that coalition, what it means is if that model is built correctly, it makes it relatively easy to decouple any one of us and plug somebody else in, so we don't have to do a really good job at whatever service we're providing.
Is it, Ian, the same experience for you? How do you interact with customers in this environment?
I think a lot of it is actually evolving as we go on. With the technology is changing, and we're finding new ways to try to make things possible. So I think I don't have a straight answer for that. This is how we're solving it. But I think, like you rightly said, a lot of it is you can plug somebody else in. We're trying to do new coding practices. Build in the SaaS software. But then your firewalls. There's a lot of experimentation as well that's taking place. And I think that's going to continue because technology is a changing aspect of life. It's constantly going to evolve, and the ways we do things are going to change.
As a digital, did you say digital citizen?
Digital citizens.
As a digital citizen, that's what I thought. What are our responsibilities? Because it does seem, sometimes I think I'm just naive and stupid, but it does seem like all of this stuff ironically may empower individuals more than larger entities. What, as a digital citizen, what should we be thinking of and doing as we enter this new era?
Yeah, so I think that a lot of you know, the issues in terms of the wider technology adoption were brought up in some sessions I attended this morning, this afternoon. You know, security. I mean, that's, you know, clearly the attack surface has gotten much larger with all of these things deployed in just about everything that we use on a daily basis. How comfortable are you with, you know, data privacy? Data privacy is it's an individual responsibility, but it's also where does government come in?
Now, we're,
Right?
we should or shouldn't.
Exactly. And I think that, you know, what's really fascinating to watch, as much as we're talking about all of this really cool technology, at the end of the day, it will be consumed and adopted on a massive scale based on, is it performing a useful service? In other words, is it something that I do every day that can just be made much easier? And my favorite example is Uber. I'm a big Uber fan. You know, it's basically a car driving service. It takes you from point A to B. You throw in cloud for the algorithm that provides the really great user experience. You have the sensors on your smartphone or the driver's phone, and they transform a very simple service into one that's widely adoptable. And I think that you're going to see, again, more of these everyday services that you take for granted. You know, we're involved with some connected car projects that are beyond the.
At the end of the day, you know, it's like 100-year-old technology is still in the car. I see it. I think the food is available. It feels like we're something. So what I'd like to do is encourage everybody to talk to our panelists. I hope you're going to hang around for the expo. Please talk to them with any questions that you have. I thank you very much for all of your thoughts. I wish we had more time, but it's time to go to the expo floor. Thank you very much.